When you work in law enforcement, seconds count when you make decisions. Quality training can make all the difference for officers and the public they protect.
I heard from an officer that did not have any specialized training and ended up having to go to a case where a child was being abused. And the feedback was that this training gave them the confidence to know what they were able to do and be able to help that child and also do the proper foundation. So this way, that case was able to be successfully investigated and prosecuted. So just that officer said just having that confidence was enough and really helped them in their job. And that's something they wouldn't have had if they didn't take that training.
That's Ken Zipovsky, Grants Manager and Technology Coordinator for the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police. Ken joins Da Vinci's Jenny Kerwin and me to talk about how training delivered through the Pennsylvania Virtual Training Network helps educate officers and prepare them for duty. Next on Powered by Learning.
Powered by Learning is brought to you by Da Vinci Interactive. Da Vinci's approach to learning is grounded in 30 years of innovation and expertise. We use proven strategies and leading technology to develop solutions that empower learners to improve quality and boost performance. Learn more at davinci.com.
Joining me today is Jenny Kerwin, Da Vinci Manager of Learning Management Systems, and our guest, Ken Zipovsky, Grants Manager and Technology Coordinator for the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police. Ken, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Ken, it's so good to be with you today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you on our podcast.
Ken, let's start off by sharing a little bit about the PA Chiefs of Police and your role there.
I've been at the Chiefs of Police Association for a little over 4 years now. My current job is Grants Management and Technology Coordinator. That's a lot to pack into a small area. Basically, I handle the grants as far as trying to get funding for projects, also the administration of projects. One of the projects that takes up a majority of my time is actually working on our online training system, which is the PAVTN, the Pennsylvania Virtual Training Network.
Ken, I know Jenny and the Da Vinci team have a long history working with you and others at the PA Chiefs of Police Association. You and Jenny have worked together for a few years, but Jenny, your connection with the association goes back to 2011, helping to create PAVTN, the Pennsylvania Virtual Training Network, and creating numerous e-learning courses and videos for the association.
It's been a real honor and part of my career to work with PA Chiefs and produce the training that helps officers and helps the victims that they respond to. So it's just been a wonderful experience, and I'm excited to talk more about it with Ken today.
Great.
So let's get started, Ken. I just wanted to start out by talking to you about training law enforcement officers and really looking at your experience. You bring over 30 years of experience in the field of law enforcement and training to this conversation. Throughout your career, you've always pursued continuous learning and even been a mentor and an instructor to fellow officers. With all of that dedication and to professional growth, can you speak a little bit to what the critical role that training plays for law enforcement is today?
Training in law enforcement is very, very important. I mean, I could throw a couple more varies in, but it's a very critical thing because what happens is we have police officers that are doing things, reacting in a split second in many occasions. And they need the proper information about the laws, what the current best practices are. And, that information can only be provided through training. Technological advancements, many, many years ago when I first started in police work, our state-of-the-art photography equipment was a Polaroid instant camera. Times have changed, and now officers actually have body cameras that they utilize. So it's important to provide the training so this way, as technology advances and law enforcement utilizes that technology, they understand what the capabilities are, what they can and can't do, and then also how to utilize them properly. Another thing that's important about training is society's expectations change over time. So whatever the societal expectations are, that information can be imparted to officers during training. What might have been acceptable once upon a time, currently is not. Training also builds a better professional. That's an important thing. Many, many years ago when law enforcement first started in the United States, it was, there were several agencies that were known for patronage, where it was just kind of like who you know, and that's where you got a job. That is not the best way to select a person. We need officers that are fair and impartial and are professional. And part of that professionalism is training. You wouldn't go to a doctor that didn't receive training. Why would you have a police officer out there that's not properly trained? Officers also are forced to handle high pressure situations and complex situations on times. And, by providing this training, it helps them utilize the sound judgment that they need to make the right decision and do it effectively, and keep everybody's rights in mind. The risks are great, not only for police officers, but for the members of the community that they serve. So if we provide the proper training, that helps reduce that risk. And, lastly, when we're talking about the concept of training, law enforcement officers should be held to a higher standard. And part of that higher standard is providing them the training so this way they can rise to that occasion.
That's so well said. I think about it all the time while we work on projects for the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police, and just the officers that we serve and everything that they have to do in their day and keep in mind, and hoping just that the training that is available to them is serving all of those needs that you just defined. It's really incredible. With all of those challenges, I know that it is a challenge to offer training to law enforcement officers, especially with the list of how critical that training is. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the biggest challenges that you face with educating law enforcement officers, whether it be, their schedule, or you talked about the high stress and navigating the high stress environments, but I'm just curious as to what additional challenges that you experience with it.
Some of the challenges that we currently deal with, it's that balance between what realism is and officer safety is. Like, to make a very clear example of that, we look at firearms training. There has to be a balance between an officer being able to utilize their firearm competently and accurately, but also providing a realistic situation. The training, once again, I go back to, many, many years ago, was static training. You stood on a line at a location, someone gave you a whistle or told you to fire, and then you fired. That's not the reality of the world. That's not what our police officers are dealing with. So how do you get something that's dangerous, because a firearm can be dangerous, and train on that, and also be in a situation where it's the real world, or as close as you can get to it, but also do it in a manner where everybody remains safe, or as safe as possible, to mitigate that risk. So that's really a situation that we look at when we're looking at training, is how do we have our officers trained in a realistic situation, but also mitigate any type of danger or risk that could occur. Because, even something as simple as physical training, you have an officer that's running. One of the greatest injuries that happen to officers is when they're doing a sprint. It's the pulled hamstrings and things like that, and other issues. Well, that happens because officers are static most of the time. You're sitting there waiting for that one moment of action. They might be in a cruiser driving around patrolling the area, and then something happens and they have to just throw the car in park, jump out, and go. And by developing programs that balance that realism and help mitigate a loss, that's an important thing, and that's one of the things that we need to deal with on a constant basis. Laws and policies change. Updating those things is also a critical thing. How do you keep up with that information? And how do you get it out to people in a timely manner? That's always been a challenge. And then, we're in the world of an information flood now. You're deluged with all this information, and which is critical, which isn't. Everything's important, but You have to be able to prioritize certain things because we only have a finite amount of time that we can get that officer to train. We can't have professional trainers. We have to have officers that actually are given the tools they need to be able to go out on the street and provide the service to the community. So it's kind of tough with that balance sometimes, trying to find that right spot and, the selection of what's critical and what's not. Another challenge is looking at the diverse needs of your individuals that you're training. You're not training 50 of the same people. You are training 50 individuals that have different backstories. They have different learning levels. They have different educational levels. And, how do you provide information that everybody can benefit from and not bore people that are more advanced or lose them? Or, how do you do something that's advanced enough that the lowest common denominator, for lack of a better term, gains something out of it? That's kind of a tough thing too. And, lastly, I look at like time constraints. One of the things that help actually is our online training. The PAVTN is something that helps us deal with time constraints because traditionally, when we look at just something as simple as our in-service training for municipal police officers, you would have to physically get into a car, drive to a location, have an in-person instructor, teach the course, and then when it's done, drive back to your police station. So there's a lot of planning and logistics that go into that. You're backfilling officers that might have been on the shift that now have to go to the training, and it just creates a lot of disruption where we can mitigate that by having our online training. When we have that same in-service training online, now it can be at an elective time, anytime 24/7 throughout the whole year. You have, a load of officers on today for quarter, whatever the reason is. Well, now you have that overflow. So now you can say, hey, officer, go sit at the computer now and take this training since we have enough people to cover the road. It's a great tool. And, I think that's definitely one of the ways we are actually trying to, overcome and deal with some of those challenges that we have regarding training in the 21st century.
I think one of the other challenges that I've seen Ken, you and Jenny and our team and your team meet head on is just evolving with the challenges of meeting the people you serve, which are very varied. I'm very impressed by the diversity of the courses that are offered, like understanding, how to handle somebody who has had a traumatic brain injury. So just, understanding, how to work with the public, not just the practicalities of how to be an officer and how to do your job, but really trying to not only meet your learners where they are, but meet the public where they are. And I think that's a challenge I've seen you all meet so well time after time with the variety of courses you offer.
Oh, absolutely. And, we have all types of titles and terminology for these things. They actually existed years ago, but we just didn't have a name for them. And like, the concept of like, we talk about like procedural justice or reflective listening, that was just basically treating people how you wanted to be treated. That's the old golden rule. That's what it falls back to. But, obviously sometimes we might need more reinforcement in that as to, why or what the value is in that. Because it seems sometimes as our world gets more busy and we're at a more hurried pace, it seems like we kind of forget about the niceties and the politeness, and that goes away.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot with facing all these challenges of the amount of information that's coming through, where just as Ken, you had said, you really have to prioritize, but always make sure that common ground of good policing is running through the information that we're sharing and the educational experiences. So it is, you very eloquently stated the challenges that I think we talk about often, but I'm glad to know that you do feel we're succeeding with what we're offering in online training for our officers. One of the things that we like to consider, and I wanted to get your perspective on, was because of the constant deluge of information that officers are receiving, how do we and how do you look at training to break through some of that noise and create experiences that can be memorable so that they can recall the information they need in that moment?
Some of the ways we can do that are, utilizing scenario-based training, having a realistic simulation that allows people to walk through that experience, and it helps them retain it further. You put somebody in a stressful situation in a controlled environment, role playing scenarios, things like that can help fortify what's being read on a screen or being told to them while they're learning, through an online format. Uh, Hands-on interactive learning is another important concept. By utilizing those simple things such as like knowledge checks, where it forces a person that took the training just now to go, okay, what is the answer to this question, and move their mouse and make the proper selection, and get the verification that yes, you did actually learn this. Now we can move on to the next section. Those things help engage someone, because one of the downfalls, if you will, or one of the negative things when you're looking at online training is the fact that it is online. You don't have that human interaction. We do our best that we can to replicate that, or to keep the person that's learning involved, but the reality is it's not the same as the conversation like we're having now. You're missing that feedback, or if you have a question about something, sometimes you don't have that person to talk to get better clarification. So one of the ways we can verify it or get a better understanding if the person knows what we're talking about is by doing those knowledge check questions. It's very important to try to provide this information and, verify the officers have the knowledge before we go to the next section.
That is a good point. I also like when we think about getting their attention, and I do think the PHEs has done a wonderful job over the years of really connecting and making sure that there's an officer's voice in all of the training that's produced. So whether that's bringing your own subject matter expertise to the training, or if we're seeking different folks to provide a voice or even a video, or have the officers hear from them, I do think that there is some definite impact that's made when the officers can recognize that they're hearing from people who have walked the walk and have been in their shoes. So another wonderful thing that I think the chiefs keep in mind as we produce this training. So transitioning over to talking a little bit about Pennsylvania Virtual Training Network, and a little bit about where the officers take that training. You are also, the administrator of that site. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what are the biggest, you talked a little bit about the biggest benefits, but what are some other challenges that we face with online learning?
When we're dealing with online learning, there are a bunch of positive things that we talked about. You're able to expand your learning opportunities. They can get specialized training at any time that they want. Interactive formats, being able to have a video or a graphic that accentuates is definitely a positive. We have the ability to put out immediate updates. So if there's something that needs to be critically given to the officers or new information they need, we're able to get that to them right away. The learning standardized. So this way it goes throughout the state, or throughout the country, because we have some partners that take the training even though they're not necessarily officers in Pennsylvania. We have many federal officers and people from other, seems like North Carolina for whatever reason, that happen to pick up on the PAVTN, and there's several agencies there that take our training. So we're more than happy to make a whole safer community. But some of the challenges, the limited ability for hands-on practice. That's one of the things. So, it's kind of hard to, like bake a cake. I can give you a recipe, but until you really know how you make that batter and work with it and see what the consistency, like what are they talking about there? What does that really look like? And what does that feel like? And, that's one of the things that, is kind of hard to replicate when we're looking at the world of online training. Engagement and retention, that's another issue. You would hope most people are conscientious and they're there learning the training, but just like we can put the TV on when we're at home, you put it on and it's background noise and you just go about your day and do what you're doing. Some people can get into that trap and get distracted, where if we had that person in a classroom, it would be a lot easier for that person to pay attention, or if they were drifting off, that instructor would be able to direct them back and bring them back into attention. Technological barriers, that's another issue when we're looking at technology. Not everybody has the same capabilities. And, unfortunately, our computers have become more complex to use since, bad guys have exploited computers. Now we're into multi-factor authentication, and we're into, things that automatically filter out emails, and sites are blocked, and other lockdowns are done on a computer. And if someone's using an agency computer, they might have a restriction on it that actually doesn't give them the full learning experience or impedes their process. So if you have a person who's very frustrated trying to get onto the training and they finally get logged on, now that person is, their attention span is gone because they're angry and they're frustrated, and I get it, but they're not going to learn as well as somebody who comes with a positive experience and looks forward to doing what they have to do regarding the training. And I guess the last thing we're looking at, I think that would be a barrier, is the assessment of competency. We do have people that can pass an exam or pass a quiz, but if we go back to the hands-on thing, how do we show that a person has the physical ability to do that, or the technical skills, because they passed a written test? And that's something that we just don't have the ability to fix right now. And there's going to have to be some type of hybrid training where, a majority, you can do a majority of it online, and then have a situation where someone has to do a portion of it in person, or, some other workaround. But, that's the reality as it is right now.
Yeah, and I think that's been the reality since we launched PAVTN in 2011, is that it's always not, they're not going to be able to receive all of their training online, because it's not an online job. It's a real in the field, absolutely in the moment kind of position. So we do everything that we can to set up people for success with the scenarios like you talked about. But sometimes that in classroom, that in-person blended learning approach is absolutely the best way to reach people and confirm that they've actually retained that information, and do it in a safe environment so that you can really test those skills. With what you do as an administrator for PAVTN, I know with the learning management system, we collect a lot of data. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you draw insights from the reporting tools that are provided through the system, and how you use that data to make decisions about other training that you want to pursue, or just what you want to, how you want to shape the experience for the officers?
We could have the best idea in the world on what training we want to put on, but if we don't have the financing for it, it's never going to get off the ground. So I hate to say it, but a lot of our reporting is to show our work. So that when we get funding from somewhere, well, people don't want to give you funding unless if they know they're getting the best bang for their buck. I want to see that this produces. I want to see the end result. I want to see the good things that you're going to do with this. And that is one thing that we rely on heavily when we look at the PAVTN. The data that's driven there, I can show how many people and how many officers do we have that are signed up for the training, how many officers have taken it, how many people have successfully completed it. So those metrics are important to report back as part of any type of grants or funding or justification for funds that were expended. And that helps keep us doing the good things that we're doing. Looking at it, business aside, okay, we have our money, we have our course built. When you look at what we're giving as far as service and to the officer that's learning, we're able to show that they have knowledge retention by doing those quizzes and exams and knowledge checks along the way. So there is a way we can actually show these officers have learned something. And if there's an issue where maybe we have a high failure rate or a low scoring rate on a quiz or an exam, we can go back and look and say, hey, did these questions accurately reflect the material that was being taught? Or maybe are we too involved? Is this too technical? And do we need to kind of go back to the basics so this way people can get that basic information first and build off it, and then we retool to maybe do an advanced portion of that course? The data that we have also shapes our training initiatives. If you see that there's a very popular topic, that might be the input for us to build on that and create a series of training on that subject. And lastly, when we're looking at data reporting from the PAVTN specifically, there are surveys from people who take the training. So if there's a problem where someone says, hey, this course stunk, it was too simple, or it was too hard, I don't know what you're teaching me, what I'm getting absolutely nothing out of this, we can look at those.
Which they never say, Ken.
We can look at that information and say, okay, well, is this a valid complaint, or is this just a person that's, the ultimate contrarian that wants to complain about everything? And, it helps us get a better understanding as to what knowledge is being delivered and what knowledge is being retained.
Excellent. I'm so overwhelmed whenever I go into PAVTN and look at the number of people who are online during a day, some of the snapshot reports that we can give you to give an idea of where people are spending the most time, and then really the numbers year over year in terms of the number of people who have registered, and then the people who have completed training. It keeps growing year over year. I know this year was a milestone where we added a large group of officers from part of the state that had not typically been in PAVTN in the past. So we're more than happy that we can give you that data, and we're always excited when you give us the challenge of, I need this new number, or I need to understand these numbers in a different way. It's the power in the data is always impressive to me for some reason. So in talking about data, let's shift to talk about the trends in the future of training for law enforcement. What trends are you seeing that are coming up? I mean, we've talked so much about scenario-based training. Obviously, I think that's an ongoing trend and is always going to be necessary. But is there anything else on the horizon that you're seeing? I know that you and I have talked a lot about mobile training opportunities and brief micro training opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, law enforcement is something that's constantly evolving, so the training has to constantly evolve with it. One of the hot topics now is the use of virtual reality and simulations. That definitely can be a benefit if it's used the right way. What we don't want to get into is the situation where someone's just throwing technology out just because we have it and not really understanding what it does and what benefit are we getting out of it. It's just as simple as even playing a video or inserting a video into a training. If it's just pure entertainment or you're just tired of talking, you're not getting the benefit out of it. That video has to have a relevant point and call back to whatever we're looking for as our training objective and say, hey, does this accent that? Does that bring a point home? So that's something we have to look at, and we don't want to get into, just throwing technology for technology. I think the gamification of training can be beneficial. I don't know if that's the proper term or not, but in law enforcement in general, most people are type A competitive personalities. You have to have that self-drive and that ambition to want to be involved in law enforcement in the first place. So those people have an innate need or a personality trait that they want scratched, and that's the concept of competition or satisfaction or achievement. And when we're looking at the world of micro learning, that's something that we're looking at and we're going to deploy soon in the PAVTN, where this way individuals are going to be able to look at smaller bites of a course that specifically cover a topic. Let's look at the situation for child abuse. If there's an officer that gets a call for a report of a child abuse case, that micro learning will be there that the officer can go to their phone, and they can just go through it very quickly and get those key points that they need to remember before they actually pull up at that house. And they'll have the information on how to properly talk to people so we don't taint our victim or do something that damages a potential case. And it's a very simple thing, but that's something that's evolving. That's something that we need to do and try to change, because someone's not going to have the time to take a 3-hour online course before they go to the call. So the question is, how do I get somebody that already has this information in their head refreshed so they know what to do when they hit the streets in a few moments? And that's where I think the micro learning opportunities are crucial.
Yeah. So important.
Yeah, anything that we can do to prepare them to face the difficult calls that they have to go on, and able to quickly recall information that could help save a life or put a victim in touch with somebody who can make their experience better in the end is a wonderful thing that we try to remind our officers of. So just to wrap us up, Ken, I wanted to see if you could share any success stories that you've heard from officers who have completed training online, or some of your experiences with what you've learned from online training that you've applied or shared with other officers throughout the years.
I guess if I'm looking for one that sticks out in my mind regarding our online training from the PAVTN, it's regarding our child abuse training. I heard from an officer that did not have any specialized training and ended up having to go to a case where a child was being abused. And the feedback was that this training gave them the confidence to know what they were able to do and be able to help that child, and also do the proper foundation. So this way, that case was able to be successfully investigated and prosecuted. So just that officer said just having that confidence was enough, and really helped them in their job. And that's something they wouldn't have had if they didn't take that training. There are, like I said, there are many stories that we can talk about, but administrators appreciate the online training because they're able to have their officers have more choices on what they can take, and more flexibility on when they can take them. So, we are really educating the law enforcement community in a financially responsible way, and that's making an entire safe community.
You're definitely making an impact, Ken. Our thanks to you and all the officers across the state and across the country that keep our community safe. And I know Jenny and the team will continue to look forward to working with you and your team to create that meaningful training and to keep our communities safe in the future.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you so much.
My thanks to Da Vinci's Jenny Kerwin and our guest, Ken Zipovsky from the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police, for joining me today. You can learn more about Da Vinci's work with the PA Chiefs on our website at davinci.com. And if you have an idea for a topic or guest, please reach out to us at poweredbylearning@davinci.com. And don't forget that you can subscribe to Powered by Learning wherever you listen to your podcasts.